What's going on, motorcycle friends and enthusiasts? So I'm going to go ahead and answer a question that I've been asked a million times now, and that is, which bike should I buy, the 300L or the 450L? And let me just start off by saying they're two completely different bikes in two completely different categories, but they do share the L letter at the end of their names, so a lot of people think that they are similar. So right off the bat, this bike right here costs about half of what this one does. $5,000. $10,000. Now there's many reasons for that, but ultimately the 300L is made out of a lot cheaper of materials. It is a steel frame, so this bike is a little bit heavier, but you'd be surprised that it doesn't feel that way. I'll get into that later, but I just kind of want to walk you through the main differences. Ultimately, if you don't want to watch this 10-15 minute video, this is a street bike. This is a dirt bike. The 450L has far superior suspension, way more power. It really has the motocross roots. This thing is more set up to ride the gnarlier terrain and is really a more off-road capable machine. Now where this bike shines, the 300L, is on the road. This is essentially a street bike design. You have the CBR engine, the soft plush suspension, the lower ride height. This shares a lot of parts from the CBR, and it makes it really good on the street. These are both 6 speeds, but this is far more enjoyable to ride on the road. So for me personally, this makes a better dual sport. If you're gonna do a lot of road riding with just some light trail use, this is your pick right here. I've done some gnarly riding on these bikes though, especially my old 250L. So I'm not saying that it can't be done, but that is where the 450 shines. So for the price, I really do think you get a lot with this bike. Obviously both of these bikes are modified, the 450L being heavily modified, but this thing out of the box is a really good package. Now I feel like a lot of people buy the 300L and expect it to be a fantastic dirt bike. You're not going to be taking this thing to the motocross track. It is just not made for that. Sure, you can do it, but you can do pretty much anything on any bike. It doesn't mean it's going to be good at it. So the biggest difference is the quality of components. The suspension on this is very soft. You can't really make any adjustments, to where the 450L you can fine tune and it's a lot more capable. Still, both of these bikes come pretty soft from the factory, as most bikes do. I kind of wish they would come in different packages based on your weight, but that costs them too much money, like they don't make enough. But that's pretty much the basic differences between the two. I don't know if you can tell, but it is pouring right now, so we're gonna have to finish this video inside the shop. But that's okay, we can pull out the laptop, get you guys some specs, and really walk through those key differences, performance numbers, weights, etc. So let's get inside. All right, we're inside, safe and sound, out of the rain. Dude, it's been raining like crazy the past couple days. Also, I want to give a shout out to Mr. Downey for making this video possible. I had a busy day, got a lot of stuff done. I wasn't originally going to upload, but Downey hit me with that super chat and told me that I had to make it happen. So what am I going to do? Say no? I couldn't do that. He's an A1 Day 1 supporter, so shout out to you, Mr. Downey. But I know a lot of you out there are into the numbers. Me, not so much. I'm more into the feel. But I guess if you've never ridden either, it kind of helps to have a baseline. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is weight, because that is the biggest asked question about both of these bikes. So we'll start out with the heavier one on paper, and that is the 300L, and it weighs around 310 pounds. Now that sounds like a lot. It is a lot, but let's compare that with the 450L. The 450 comes in at 290 pounds. So realistically, there's probably a 20 to 25 pound difference between the two. And let me tell you, once you hop on the 450L and actually ride it, it does not feel lighter. To me, the 250L and 300L have always felt well balanced. I think they wear their weight in the right areas, to where the 450Ls always kind of felt top heavy, especially with the oversized tank, but even in the stock form, it just feels heavier than it is. I mean, 290 pounds is still a lot for a dirt bike, especially when you compare it to a KTM 450 EXC that weighs in at like 245. That's a pretty big difference. It definitely shows. It's still a pig. And what I'm getting at here is, don't let that be a deciding factor when it comes down to which bike you want to pick. The 300 really doesn't feel as heavy as it is. So that's always been my argument, and I think they really did a good job with the ergonomics of that bike. So moving on, let's talk power numbers. There's a big difference here, and this is probably the most noticeable thing. If you are a guy or girl that craves power, you gotta have it. Definitely get the 450L, because you're gonna be let down. The 300L does not have a lot of power. It is a small step up from the 250, just enough to make it bearable on the highway. But it is night and day difference, especially when you fully uncork the 450, get the proper ECU on there, get a full exhaust system. This thing screams. It's a blast to ride. So if you are a speed demon, you love that adrenaline rush, then the 450 is probably going to be a better option. But me, most of the time, I like riding like a grandpa, riding around in creek beds, doing little technical log crossings, and that is where the 300 shines, in my opinion, because I think it does that stuff a lot better than the 450. The 300L has around 20 horsepower, where the 450 doubles that at around 40. And it feels that way, it really does. Acceleration, top speed, it's a faster bike, but that can be a good thing and a bad thing. If you're not going to use that power, then this bike is harder to manage while going slow, especially when you factor in the heavier clutch pull. This thing is just ridiculous. Why they haven't put the hydraulic clutch on this bike yet, I will not know. The 450R has it. There is a kit for it, but at the end of the day, it's something that the bike should come with at this point. On the other end of the spectrum, the clutch pull on the 300 is buttery smooth. I can work that thing all day and my fingers will never get sore, and it really makes the low speed stuff way more enjoyable, and it wears me out far less than the 450 does. I mean, this thing is tiring to ride at slow stuff. That being said, once the trails open up and you get to use that 450 power, this bike shines. You have a lot more fun in the fast-paced stuff. With a better suspension too, it can handle it. When you're hitting bumps at speed, you can wash out a lot of the times on the 300 and bottom out in certain situations where you won't be doing that on the 450. So we talked about power. Next, let's address the suspension issue, and that is the biggest downfall of the 300L. The factory suspension is garbage. It is way too soft for any kind of dirt riding. Now, I'm 185 pounds. There's a lot of people heavier than me, and there's a lot of people lighter. If you are a lighter person, around 140, 150 pounds, then it's probably going to be pretty good for you. It'll still be soft in the woods and over light jumps, but you'll be able to get by. But once you get over that 160, 170 mark, it's going to be way too soft. And for me, that's 185 butt naked, fresh out of the shower. After you add gear, I'm well over 200 pounds, and the thing is just like a pogo stick. But here's my counter argument to that. Upgrading the suspension on the 300L is fairly easy, and I don't want to say inexpensive, but reasonable. The YSS rear shock is a great option. You can throw the Race Tech spring kit in the front. The 300L has a weird fork design. Each fork serves a different purpose. I'm not going to get too much into that, but it can be upgraded fairly easily. So, although it's kind of a hassle that you have to do that, it's still rideable as is. I've still had plenty of fun with the stock suspension, and I never even upgraded the suspension on the 250L. And if you go back and look at the videos that we did with that bike, I mean, we were riding it like a KTM XCW. We were doing some fairly technical stuff. I was always riding with just straight up dirt bike guys, so I was always pushing that bike to the limit. And that's what gained a lot of my following. So that is what I'll continue to do with the 300, but I think this time around, we are gonna do some upgrades and make it more suited for my weight. The 450, on the other hand, that's where this bike shines. It has a way better suspension. You can fine tune it to fit your needs. Way better components, and that is the stuff that you pay for, guys. The engine, the suspension, all of the metals, everything is better quality on this bike. Now, do I think it's an extra $5,000 more quality? No, I do not. At the end of the day, this still isn't going to perform like a true dirt bike. The best option, in my opinion, is just to get the 300 to have as a dual sport and then just get a secondary dirt bike. But if you just have to pick one bike, then that's what this video is about, helping you make that decision. Right now, I am struggling with a knee injury, so I haven't been able to ride to my full potential and do the stuff that I like to do, so I'm more than happy on the 300L. But even when I was in my prime, riding my old 450L, I still didn't like the bike and I still preferred the 250L. Call me crazy, you just have to ride both of them and then you'll understand. I mean, I had less than $3 grand in my 250L. Think about that for a minute. When you consider this bike is $10,000 brand new, you know, is it $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 more fun? No, not to me. But once again, the 300L, the 250L, they just fit my riding style and I can do everything that I want to do on those bikes. Power, weight, suspension, what else? Ergonomics. The 450L is a tall bike. It definitely feels more of a dirt bike to where the 300L kind of feels more like a cruiser bike, and I kind of like that. It's really comfortable on the road, it's comfortable off-road, and I can ride way longer on that bike and get less tired, to where the 450 has got a more aggressive riding position, has those motocross roots. Got a little bit more ground clearance, which is nice on the 450. I feel a lot better throwing this bike around and abusing it than I do the 300, but I haven't had any issues yet, and I never did with my 250L, other than denting the stock metal gas tank on the 250, which you can upgrade to a plastic tank. I tried the Cherubies tank on the 250L. It didn't work out, so I have the IMS on the 450, and I absolutely love the tank. It's a little heavy up top, but the 3-gallon capacity is just super nice and makes the longer dual sport rides way more enjoyable. Both these bikes come with similar dual sport tires from the factory. They're junk. You need to swap them out right away. I would recommend the Tusk D-Sport tires, the Dunlop D606, the Kenda Trackmaster, all great options. I'm actually a Rocky Mountain affiliate, so if you use my link down in the description below, it helps support the channel. I greatly appreciate it. Rocky Mountain has a great team, and they're just an outstanding company. The shipping is fast. They offer tons of parts and accessories. I highly recommend checking out their site if you haven't already. Another argument is you have to do a lot more to the 450 to make it a good bike. From the factory, this thing is super choked up, way more choked up than the 300. You know, this has the $700 ECU, the 800 exhaust, and those things are a must for this bike. It's just way too choppy in the stock form. You just have to open this thing up, let it breathe. And this is a $15,000 bike sitting behind me. And in my opinion, you really need to do almost all of those mods to make this bike what it is. I have another video, actually my last video is about the 450L, all of the money that has been put into this bike. So I'll go ahead and leave a card on the screen now. I highly suggest if you are wanting to buy this bike, you check out that video first. But this thing is a money pit, and you really do need to spend some of that money to get this thing performing well, versus the 300. Like I said earlier, it's good right out of the box. You don't really have the stalling issues and the flame outs. If you're gonna do trail riding, I would change the gearing on both of these bikes, but the 300 is pretty noticeable. What else can we talk about? I just really wanted to make this video because I get asked this question all of the time, and I just want to clear the air. These bikes are for different people. If you have the opportunity to ride one, you have any friends, you know, any riding areas near you that you could get access to one, it would be nice if you could ride one before you buy it, because I'd hate for you to get either one of these things and then end up disagreeing with me, which is completely okay, but I just don't want you to regret your decision. I feel like a lot of people that have got 250Ls and 300Ls from watching the channel overall have been pretty happy, but I'm sure there are some people that have been let down. It's one thing seeing things on video, seeing me do different kinds of riding, but it just comes down to seat time, guys. Get the seat time in. Another good thing about buying the 300L and then figuring out that you don't like it is you don't have nearly as much money into that bike. And with the limited availability right now, you will definitely get your money back. Versus the 450, there's quite a bit of them out there right now, and with that higher price tag, there's less people that want them. So if you buy this bike and figure out that you don't want it, especially if you buy it new from a dealership, you're gonna lose out on a lot of money. And I just really do have two completely different feelings toward these bikes. I love the 300L. I obviously don't love the 450L, as it's already listed on Marketplace. If you are interested in purchasing this bike, I will have my email down below. Feel free to hit me up. But a lot of people think that I hate the 450L, and I don't. It's a great bike for the right person. At the end of the day, it's just not for me, so that is why I prefer the 300L. Those are the key differences. I hope this kind of clears things up for you folks out there that are in the market. I really do think that the 450L is easier to find right now. These 300s are hard to find. I know people who have waited upwards of 6 months and still haven't got theirs. So if you do want one, I highly suggest calling around, call all your local dealerships, definitely put a deposit down and see if you can get one soon. Hopefully that'll change throughout the next year as things get back to normal, although it isn't looking like that, but hey, it is what it is. If there are any other questions that you want answered, feel free to comment down below. So if you like comparison videos like this and you'd want to see more, feel free to hit that like button. It helps out the channel. Subscribe if you're new. We got a lot of exciting stuff coming to the channel, so I'd love to have you on the team. That's going to wrap things up. I don't want to ramble on for too long. Shout out to Downey once again, and until the next video, we'll see you then.